So Apple has finally released the new iPhone 14 models, and before you give your hard-earned cash to Timmy Cook,
show me the money! Show me the money!
let's take a look at the iPhone 14s and which one is right for you. So we have the iPhone 14 lineup here. Obviously, I will get to the Pro Max a little bit later. But we have the iPhone 14 Pro, the Plus, and the 14. You have a different color array for the regular 14s and the 14 Pros. You get, you can either get deep purple, gold, silver, or space black. Personally, I would get silver. And for the iPhone 14s, you get blue, purple, midnight, starlight, and I would probably get product red. The actual pricing is about $100 difference between each model. For the iPhone 14 Pro, you're starting at $999, and the iPhone 14 Plus, $899, $799 for the 14. One of the big selling points of the iPhone 14 Plus is just the bigger display. Because it does not support ProMotion, it doesn't have that dynamic island, which is basically notch with a little bit more
pizzazz,
which I'll get to a little bit later. But essentially, yes, the 6.7-inch display is the main selling point for the iPhone 14 Plus, and the iPhone 14 still sticks with that 6.1-inch display. iPhone 14 Pro obviously has a 6.1-inch display with that dynamic island. So getting onto the dynamic island, it just integrates with iOS, giving you more features that you just don't have with the notch. Obviously, you're maintaining the Face IDs because they just shrank it down into this little pill shape. You're not getting ProMotion on the regular 14s, and you also don't get an always-on display. You're getting this crash detection on all the iPhone 14 models if you're interested in that. And as you can tell here, we actually have a triple camera setup on the iPhone 14 compared to the dual lens. Basically, it's giving you a telephoto. But the main upgrade for the Pro models is actually a 48 megapixel main wide lens. Basically, what it is just a increase in megapixels compared to last year's 12 megapixels, or compared to the other models which only have a 12 megapixel wide. You know, certain people can tell the difference between a photo shot with an iPhone with 48 megapixels compared to a photo shot with 12 megapixels on an iPhone, but because of the actual photo processing, the image processing software that Apple provides, I don't think the average consumer would be able to tell the difference. So that's something you should keep in mind. Obviously, you're not getting a telephoto on either iPhone 14s, meaning that you have only a 2 times optical zoom range compared to the iPhone 14 Pro, which basically gives you a 6 times optical zoom range. So for the iPhone 14 Plus, because it has a larger body, it obviously has a bigger battery, meaning 26 hours of video playback compared to 20 hours with the iPhone 14. And you may be wondering, okay, then why does the iPhone 14 Pro have 23 hours of video playback when it has a ProMotion display and it's as big as the iPhone 14? And that's actually due to the new A16 Bionic chip. So that A16 Bionic chip is limited to only the Pro models of the iPhone compared to the regular iPhone 14s, which give you the old A15 Bionic chip. And the big difference here is it is a 5 nanometer process versus a 4 nanometer process, which is extremely different, meaning more efficiency in terms of battery life, in terms of performance, and just everything in general. You get 5G across the board, of course, because you're paying a premium just to get an iPhone in general. So you have a ceramic shield in the front of every single iPhone here, and you get stainless steel on the Pros and you get aluminum on the Plus. So obviously stainless steel is objectively better because it doesn't break as easily as aluminum. So you get the same water resistance up to 6 meters for up to 30 minutes, and they're all compatible with MagSafe cases. But for the iPhone 14s, you do not get a 1 terabyte option, which I don't think should be too much of a problem, just because I think the regular iPhone 14 consumer does not need 1 terabyte in terms of storage, because they're not using a 48 megapixel sensor and just, they're not needing that much space. And for the display, you actually have for the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you actually have a 2000 nits peak brightness, which also is in keeping with the iPhone 14 Pro, compared to the 1200 nits peak brightness on the other iPhones. So yes, the regular is 1000 nits for the iPhone 14 Pros and 800 for the regular Pluses. So in terms of the actual dimensions of this, the iPhone 14 Pro is a little bit taller than the iPhone 14, with around basically the same width. The depth is the same, and the weight is a little bit different, with the iPhone 14 Pro being heavier than the iPhone 14. Obviously, the iPhone 14 Plus is heavier than the iPhone 14, but the Pro is a little bit heavier than the Plus. And the width is obviously larger for the Plus and height. So now we're getting on to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So here we're starting at $1099. So again, the price hasn't jumped too much, and that's because they haven't redesigned it a lot. So it's the Apple has reached its 3-year period where generally they redesign the iPhone. So this is not necessarily a huge design, although they got rid of the notch. It's just a new variation technically of the notch. So yes, I would hold off, to be honest, if you don't need an iPhone right now, because generally they do the big upgrade around next year, especially because now you still have you still have Lightning and not USB Type-C, which is something I think they will actually remove entirely. So obviously for the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you get a larger display, 6.7 inch to be exact. Obviously promotion, always on. You get a little bit more battery because it's bigger, and you get the same chip, same stainless steel, and you also get the same capacity options. So for the actual display is essentially the exact same display, just a little bit larger than the iPhone 14 Pro. So if you don't necessarily care about the dynamic island, or you're not looking for an iPhone 14 Pro, just the regular iPhone 14, you should probably look at the iPhone 13s, because they haven't made too much of a dramatic redesign, or they haven't added too many things to the iPhone 14 that really can differentiate itself from the iPhone 13. So I guess I'll just move this to the iPhone 12, because the 12 is something you should keep in mind as well. I'll just move this to 13 and 12. Okay. So you have the iPhone 14 here, 13 and 12. So over here we have the emergency SOS. So basically the iPhone 14 just adds crash detection compared to the iPhone 13, and you get autofocus with the true depth front camera, and you get about 1 hour more of video playback time, and that is actually because they share the same chip. So you have a little bit more powerful GPU, but again, not by something that is noticeable. You still get 5G across the board, and the same capacity options for the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 14. I'll get to the iPhone 12 just a little bit, and you get the same display. It's really not that different. It is practically the exact same thing, a little bit lighter, but yes, it's practically the same thing, with the new updates. Like, you get 1 more year of an iOS update, but I don't think that is too much of a problem, because Apple gives 5 years of software updates. So if you're okay with 4 and you want to save $100, then I would personally recommend going for the iPhone 13 if you need an iPhone today. But if you're waiting to hold off, you should probably hold off for the iPhone 15. So now here's the reason I don't recommend the 12. The reason I don't recommend the 12 is actually because it starts at 64 gigs for the capacity, meaning that you're going to have to spend more for the 128, which is the starting capacity of the iPhone 13, and then it gets really close to the iPhone 13 starting price. So yeah, just go for the iPhone 13 if you're looking for the iPhone 14, if you really don't care about crash detection, which I don't think many people do, and if you don't care about 1 extra year of software updates. Now, this gets really interesting. So we have the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Plus, and just the newer models. Let's talk about the newer models and who I would recommend each of the new iPhones to. So obviously, I wouldn't necessarily recommend the iPhone 14 to basically anyone. It's essentially the exact same iPhone 13 of before with crash detection, and it's $100 more. So you have the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Plus. So who would I personally recommend these to? Well, for the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is generally for people who are who care about things like the 48 megapixel main sensor, and they care about a ProMotion display, aka 120 hertz. So yes, it's only for the people that actually do care about maybe a slightly faster chip day to day, someone who cares about obviously the notch. They don't like the notch, I guess, or want something a little bit different, or they want that dynamic island with the features. So I think that this is for the person who was going to buy the iPhone 13 Pro Max last year, obviously, but the iPhone 14 Plus is still relatively appealing because it's starting at $899. Obviously not the cheapest phone in the world, but you are getting that larger display, and for the general public, that is good enough for what they need, right? A 6.7-inch display, a dual camera system. Not everybody needs triple cameras, not everybody needs that telephoto. So I think most people are fine with 2x optical zoom range, and A15 is quite powerful. That's why they reused the A15 for the new iPhone 14s. So yes, I personally think for the average consumer, and if you really do want to get an iPhone 14, you don't want to get an older model, I would choose the iPhone 14 Plus just for the general public, because I don't think many people could tell the difference between 120 hertz and 60 hertz. Again, to people who have actually used 120 hertz before, let's say if you had the Pro Max or the Pros before, obviously you would be able to tell the difference. So if you had an iPhone 13 Pro, I would not recommend going to the Plus. So yes, again, it's very dependent on the consumer. So yes, okay, now who would I recommend the Pro to? This is very simple. Anyone who does not want the larger size of the Plus, and or the Pro Max basically, and does want the ProMotion technology and a little bit faster performance and a little bit more optimized for iOS. So I think that is basically it. And yes, so my overview is that I think you should probably hold off if you can, but again, as I mentioned before, according to whomever you are, you can take a look at which iPhone you think could be right for you. Hopefully I helped you with that. And yeah, if you like this video, please don't forget to check out the Apple Watch faces that I have a video on over here. So yes, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.